What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful.com. Here with a name you know, Dr. Tom Prichard. You can catch him on adfreeshows.com podcast that I'm very excited for. X-Ray with Tom Prichard. Tom, how you doing?
Doing great, Sean. Good to be with you today.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. You have a wealth of professional wrestling knowledge that you've shared with a lot of people over the last few decades, and I'm really excited to hear a little bit about it, and they can hear about it more on your show.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool concept where we're going to be watching some of the old school wrestling matches and going over what they could have done, what they might have done differently if they watched it back. But, I mean, professional wrestling is all about telling stories and getting connected with the people who watch it, a.k.a. wrestling fans. And a lot of the old school matches were very basic. But for that time frame, there were obviously it was a different culture, it was a different way of doing things, but they still had to tell stories. And a lot of guys these days don't necessarily understand that you have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's what guys like Terry Funk, Harley Race, I'm trying to think of the other guys right now, Dick Murdoch, people who told stories in a different way they do nowadays, but it can still apply these days if you just take your time and slow down and don't just do moves. These guys put the emotion and the feeling into the match, and that's what's missing today, in my opinion. So that's what we're going to look at, and that's what we're going to talk about during this X-Ray, man. I'm really excited about it.
And you, as I mentioned, have imparted your knowledge to tons of people over the years. How was that first brought to you by WWE? Like, hey, we want to get you involved with molding minds for us.
Well, that was part of the deal that after I had been in WWE for a little while, I was first came in 93. And in 96, the end of the run was near, and I was asked if I'd like to start training guys. WCW had the power plant, and WWE did not have anything at that time like a developmental system, like a power plant. And the office decided they wanted to develop their own stars and do something similar. And the first three guys was a bodybuilder named Achim Albrecht. The second guy was a power lifter named Mark Henry. And the third guy was just some kid named Dwayne Johnson. So that's
Did he ever do anything?
Huh?
Did he ever do anything?
I think he might have worked once or twice on top in Memphis, but
okay.
That's something we don't really want to talk about too much. But I mean, it started from there, and it just progressed along the way. And I found that I really enjoyed teaching and coaching, and to this day, so we're really having a good time doing it, man. But it all came about because WWE needed a developmental system, and I had helped some people before, and that got back to Vince. So that's how it began, and that's how it continued.
So I was probably a 10, 11-year-old kid in 96 when you just mentioned the end was coming. And I remember the Zip character. And so here's the thing. I always loved wrestling, but kind of wasn't allowed to watch it again until 95. I was about 10 years old, and I remember Tom Prichard, but I had no idea that Zip was Tom Prichard at that point.
Well, let me say this: Zip really wasn't Tom Prichard at that point. It was a horrible time in my life, horrible time in my career. I think it was more of a rib on me. They'll never admit it, but it was everything that I wasn't, and I can tell you, it was not fun. And that's what I tell people all the time: if you can't get into it and you're not connecting with the audience and feel good about what you're doing, it's not going to work. So it wasn't me. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't even do my best because it was such a horrible gimmick to me, and I was not Zip. I played the part of Zip, and that's not what you got to do in this business. You can't play a part. You have to be authentic. You have to be the part, and that's what we talk about when we watch these old matches. We talk about the difference between today and yesterday. These guys were not playing a part. Bruiser Brody was not playing Bruiser Brody. He was that guy 24/7, sometimes with the volume turned up, sometimes you had to turn it down. But guys like Wahoo McDaniel, Jack Briscoe, Terry Funk, they were those people. They were authentic characters. And I hate that word character, but they were authentic. They were the real deal. When you met them on the street, there was something about them. They were special. These days, everybody looks the same. Not everybody looks the same, but most guys are monotone and look the same in a variety of ways, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But they're just going out doing moves for the sake of doing moves, whereas there's no emotional feeling and no authenticity. So, yeah, with the Zip character, just to tell you, that was terrible for many reasons.
How was that pitched to you? Who pitched it to you? Was it Vince directly?
It was a time after the Heavenly Bodies were done in WWE. My partner Jimmy Del Rey and I were thrown together after my first partner Stan Lane just decided to quit. He wasn't making a lot of money, and he didn't like coming from Charlotte, North Carolina to Knoxville, Smoky Mountain. So we got Jimmy Del Rey, and then we had a couple shows, pay-per-views there, and then Jimmy decided to be Jimmy and didn't want to come back. So it was one of those things where I said, hey, if there's any opportunity whatsoever, and it was pitched like this, well, would you like to cut your hair, dye it blonde, and be a body Donna? I said, absolutely not. And they said, okay, click. And I went, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. And at that time, once again, you have to have the right mindset, and you've got to think positive. There was not a whole lot of positivity going on back then for me. And when I came into it, with all the wrong way of looking at it and the wrong attitude about it. And it was a disaster. And that's how I know. And that's why when I talk to people about stuff like that, I can tell them, you have to have this mindset. You got to think positive. You got to believe, and you got to know what you want, and you got to know who you are. So it was pitched as, well, if you want this is what we have. If you don't, got nothing for you right now. And I understand that. I just wasn't ready to stop wrestling at the time. But man, when I got in that situation, I almost wished I would have, quite honestly.
I know that you ended up working with Candido like a year later in ECW. How did that situation come about?
Well, that was, once again, Chris had gone back to ECW. I was now teaching and coaching for WWE, and it was Paul Heyman. Vince and Paul, WWE and Paul always had a relationship. And what a better way to make use and give Chris a good win than to have me come in and put him over in ECW arena, which I was more than happy to do because I love Chris. Chris was great, and it's just the other circumstances that went with it wasn't so great.
Also, I've always been interested, like, what went into right after that? I know you worked as Dr. X an awful lot in WWF. Like, I think if I remember the results, you were working with Brackus all the time.
Yeah, there were some times. The idea behind that was I was training Brackus,
yes,
and training Mark and training Rock along that same time. So when it was time for them to go out on the road and get some reps in, let me put on the mask and be Dr. X. So that's how that came about. Now, again, I was more than happy to take that role because now, 96, and I'm 36 years old, and I'd already had a bad neck, and oh my God, had some miles on me, and some guys can handle it better than others. But I was pretty beat up at that time, and I was more than happy to go out on the road, do what was needed to be done, and see if I could help those guys any further.
As we're filming this, I think it was a week or two ago, we learned of the passing of Tracey Smothers, unfortunately. And I know you worked with him dozens, if not hundreds of times over the years, especially in Smoky Mountain. Any thoughts or memories of Tracey Smothers and the times you guys shared?
Yeah, actually, talk about authentic. Tracey was actually a real wild-eyed Southern boy. Have you ever had the occasion to meet Tracey?
Yes, I have. Actually, I was supposed to do an interview with him the week he got diagnosed, and I met him a month later because we were supposed to do an interview, and he ran in on an interview.
What's your deal? What's your deal, man? What's your deal?
He ran in on an interview I was doing with Mikey Whipwreck. He's like, I told you I'd get you that interview.
Yeah.
He's like, I just had to run in on it. He was such a nice dude. So genuine.
Well, he was genuine and he was authentic. He was that kind of guy. You know, I've told this story many times, but I'll just tell you too. You know, we used to travel from Nashville to Knoxville when Smoky Mountain first started. It was Tracey Smothers, the Dirty White Boy, Ricky and Robert, and myself. And we rented a van or we rented a car or whatever we did. We all five rode together. And okay, sorry. Anyway, and I used to rib Tracey all along the way. And I had a way of sometimes you wouldn't know where I was coming from. And Tracey, you know, would get a little hot, but I would always back off. And Ricky Morton told me one day, he says, "You're going to push that boy right over the edge." I said, No. He knows I'm ribbing. And Ricky said, "I don't think so." So this kept on. And then finally, we got the call for WWE and went up there. We didn't tell anybody about it. We just kind of went up and this was during the time when the business was changing. Smoky Mountain was okay, but it was a territory, and it wasn't long for the world, and we knew it. So the tension was kind of running high, and Tracey had been potatoing guys a lot, just hitting them and hurting a lot of guys lately. And we went up for Survivor Series, Rock and Roll, and us, Jimmy and I, went to Boston, and we flew back that after the Survivor Series, and it was Thanksgiving time, and we stopped and ate, and Robert had his car at the airport, so we all just drove together to the town, and we somehow started talking about Tracey, and I said, Tracey had just hit Brian Lee like the week before, split his eye open, 9 stitches.
Oh no.
Yeah, and it was pretty bad, but this has been kind of regular with Tracey. And I said, well, Tracey's an idiot. He's dangerous. And you can quote me. So we got to the town, we got out, and 2 separate dressing rooms that night. And Ricky went in and started stirring the pot with Tracey. Tracey was working with Brian Lee that night. So he goes out, and Cornette had a finish laid out for these guys, and nothing. It didn't happen. Tracey's hot. He wouldn't do anything. And Brian comes back to the locker room after the match. He goes, "I don't know what's wrong with him. He didn't want to do anything out there." So I walked over. I heard him say that to Jim. And I said, "No, I know what's wrong." I told Ricky and Robert that he's an idiot. He's careless and clumsy and all this stuff. So we have a battle royal that we got to go out into. Heels go first. Here come the baby faces led by Tracey. And he's trying to get at me. And you know, I told the guys in the ring, just let him get me, let him do his deal. He'll get over it. And once he gets it out of his system, he'll be fine. But they held him back and pulled him back. So I'm riding home with Brian Lee back to Knoxville, and we happen to see Ricky, Robert, and Tracey on the side of the road, relieving themselves. And I said, "Pull over." Brian says, No, just leave it alone. So we keep going. And then we see him haul ass right in front of us. And I said, "Blink your lights, pull them over." So we did. They pulled over. And Robert was driving. Ricky's in the front seat. Tracey's in the back. And as soon as he saw me, he scrambled to get out of the seat and said, "I'll kill you, you son of a bitch." And I said, "Tracey, what's wrong with you?" He said, and he starts doing the jabs. I don't know if you ever seen him shadow box. Yes. And he's mad and he's foaming at the mouth. I said something to Ricky, and Ricky gave me a push and an F-U, and I'm threw a beer at Ricky and missed him by a mile. And then Tracey and I start spewing and cussing back and forth at each other. And right as it's getting to the point, we lock up. We're on the side of the road. He wants to rip my head off, and we're this. He's doing this. I'm going, man, what the hell? And he goes to get me. We lock up like it's in a match. No sooner do we lock up, blue lights behind us.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Blue lights. We get out, and Tracey stops immediately and looks at me and says, "Look, you got kids. I got kids. We don't need to go to jail tonight, right?" What are you talking about, man? You want to kill me a minute ago. Now it's okay. The cop comes up and says, "What are y'all doing? What the hell are you doing?" It might have been Tracey. I thought it was me, but it says, somebody said, "Well, officer, we just got done wrestling up the road a ways, and we just thought we'd pull over the side of the road and work on some spots." Swear to God. Cop says, well, you don't do that in my county. You got 15 seconds to get out of here, or all you guys going to jail. So I don't think at that time of night he wanted to mess with 5 wrestlers. So just didn't want to take the time to mess with it. As soon as we got back to Knoxville, I called Cornette and told him, I said, we just had a grapple in the gravel, just told him the story. And I said, look, because we were about to go into a program with Tracey and Tony, with Dirty White Boy. And I told Cornette, I'm not going to go into this unless we straighten this out. So we had promos the next day in Morristown. And I got there about 1 o'clock after the babyfaces were done. Tracey walked in the locker room. I sat in the babyface locker room waiting on him. And as soon as he came in, he goes, oh, hey, man, I'm so sorry. I love you, man. Hug me. I thought, what? And everything was fine. But I told Tracey, I did say everything Ricky told you I said. I did. Because you have been clumsy. You've just been outrageous lately, man. He goes, I know, man. I've just been crazy. I've been out of my mind. So, I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He was passionate.
Yeah.
And, but he was very much in tune with what was going on. And he wanted to help anybody he could in the business. So that's why he stayed in so long, I think. And anybody who met him, if you'd been around him any length of time, you got it. You understood that was Tracey, man. He beat up a locker and get so mad and fuming and want to rip your head off. But he was authentic. He was a real deal, and he didn't have to play a part. He was that part. And once again, we don't have too many guys, if any, like that anymore.
Yeah, a true extension of himself, and often just was himself. So, yeah. You had mentioned Brian Lee's name. Have you heard from him lately? I haven't seen him on the radar or anything.
No, I don't think Brian is doing too much to get attention these days, and rightfully so, because, he's Brian. And I love Brian during the time he was around and doing his thing, but we all go through those phases.
Yeah, I wondered. The last time I remembered seeing anything about him was in the Tennessee area like 6 years ago, but he doesn't pop up a lot anymore. But with nostalgia being as prevalent as it is today, you never know when somebody can change their mind. And
you never know. But it's like one of those things that some people don't mind, being babysitters, and some people do. So I mean, you know what you're going to get when you get Brian, and I love him to death. But if you don't know what you're going to get when you get Brian, then you deserve to get what you get when you get Brian.
Fair. Fair. So I know it's been a prominently recited quote on your brother's show. Mike Bucci, Nova, once said, quote, "I'd take a bullet for Tom and I'd put one in Bruce." I don't know if I want thoughts, but as much as a general reaction.
Well, there's everybody is different. Let me say this.
Yeah.
And there was always a dividing line, I guess, between the office and the boys. Rightfully so or not, it was just you were either part of the office or you're over here on this side with one of the boys. So even when I was in the office, it wasn't necessarily it's kind of like it wasn't fitting as well as it should be. Sure. And, Bruce knows how to be a businessman. He's a smart guy in the worldly ways of doing business and worldly ways of doing things the way they need to be done. And I wasn't always that office guy or the guy who would say, yes, sir, all the time. I just something about me. I can't explain it anymore. I even stopped trying to explain why I was the way I was. I was a hard guy to get to know. I didn't take to people real fast. And even though I know if you were trying to BS me, I had a hard time going, hey, all right, let's go have a beer. Hey, good.
Yeah.
If it wasn't ringing true to me, I had a hard time playing the game, I guess. And I knew it was the game. And I tell people that today. You have to have a positive attitude, and you got to know how to play the game, because life is a game. And until you own the company, they make the rules, and you better follow them, or else you're not.
Have they ever reached out to you since Bruce has been back there about maybe coming in and doing some work?
No. The last time in Tampa, I spoke to the new guy who was over talent relations in not such a flattering way, and it was just because, man, I think there were just things that were happening that I didn't agree with, or I wasn't willing to fall in line with, I guess. And
Sure.
and looking back on it, I could have, maybe I should have. At the same time, I don't know how it would have turned out in the end anyway, because if it just goes against, and it wasn't, I guess, not so much against the way I felt as it was that they were trying, I liken it this way. You were trying to run the war in Vietnam from Washington. And you saw how that worked back in the 60s. If you're around, you weren't, but I was. So we're down here in Tampa, not getting a whole lot of support and not getting a whole lot of communication. And it would be days before we would ask a question, even call the office, and not always get the right away answer. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're presented with this new idea. And, do you have a curriculum? Well, yeah, we have a curriculum. Where is it? Okay. To do professional wrestling, it is not A, B, C, D, E. This is what you do the first week, second, third, fourth. I can make that, and I did make that. In fact, the day I had my 1-year curriculum that they'd been asking for, that was the day I got fired.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, but there's your way, there's my way, but the right way and the only way does not exist. So when we had a curriculum, we knew where we needed to get the guys. But what do you need to do on this day? What's the vibe this day? How are they feeling? Where's their energy level? What do we got to do? How do we get these guys where we need them to be? What do we do? Well, my way of doing it is this. If you're not feeling this today, we're going to do something else. We're going to get to here, and then we're going to come back to this when it's the energy is a little bit higher and it's going to be more productive. That was my way of thinking. But if you say, today we're going to do this, and they're just not clicking and they're just not happening, well, let's move on to something and get your juices flowing, and let's get something going that way. And they wanted something like first week, second week, third week, A, B, C, D. What are you going to do? You follow that rule book? No. And I don't think they follow as strict as that today. Could be wrong. But I know they have a regimen. I know they have a way of doing things. Is that always the right way to do it? I never thought you wanted cookie cutter. You don't want cookie cutter because it becomes the same. And everybody's doing it the same way. Allow these guys to be creative. Allow these guys to try something. Allow these guys to step out. And it may work. It may not. But that's kind of the way I approached it. Instead of today, we're going to learn how to circle. We're going to learn how to keep the guy in the corner. Okay, if you're not feeling that, well, let's move on to something else. Let's try something else today that we might do Thursday. We'll do this on Tuesday. And that's kind of how I thought.
Is that still more how you approach things for the Jacobs-Prichard Wrestling Academy, which I encourage people check out in Knoxville? Is that more of how you approach things? You don't necessarily teach things in a specific order. You go with what works at that time?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I do. And I haven't had we do the same things. We do the same elements. We still have the same basics, fundamentals, but I don't do them exactly in line if nobody's feeling it, because I have a different number in class each time. This class, we had 21 people. Classes before, I've had 2 people in class.
Really?
I've had 1 person in class. So, I mean, I have to adjust, and I've learned how to see if they're receptive or not. If they're hitting this today, great. If they're not, great. I'm going to move on because I want you to stay stimulated. I want you to stay engaged with me. And if you're not engaged in this right now, maybe it's not something we really need to hit on. If you're not really great at doing a leapfrog, there are some things people can't do. Pat Patterson never took a backdrop. He just couldn't take a backdrop. Some people can't do certain moves because it's just not there. So what do we substitute that with? Let's work on the positives and accent that, as opposed to making you have to do a leapfrog or making you have to take a backdrop. Let's substitute something else in there. Let's see what your body type will do. Let's see what your body language looks like when you do this. It may not be something you're supposed to be doing. How about that? But yeah, it's the same approach I do. You're still going to learn the basics. You're still going to learn the fundamentals, and we allow you to be creative as well. Certainly after we get 6 weeks under your belt.
Yeah, a contemporary example to your point. I think it was on a media call. Triple H told me he doesn't like to do the posting where you go in between the top and the middle rope. He's like, I just never could do that effectively. Right. And he's like, a lot of people can. He said, I can't, so I try not to.
So there you go. So if you have a curriculum that says you have to learn this, you have to learn that, you have to learn this, well, okay, we'll try it. And if you can learn it, we're going to get it. But how much time do we spend there? And that's kind of a judgment call, a coaching call. And is it that important? I don't really think it deterred Triple H's career too much.
No.
So, yeah. So, I mean, everybody has their way of doing things. And I have my way. You have your way. The right way, the only way, does not exist. You can do it. That's the great part about professional wrestling. There is nothing etched in stone that says this is the only way to do it. And that's a quote from Vince. There's nothing etched in stone that says this is it, period, done, over. Okay, so why is it that way with training? It shouldn't be. You may be a great talker and not be able to work a lick. You may look great. The Ultimate Warrior. I don't think anybody ever walked out of the arena and said, boy, what a headlock that Ultimate Warrior had tonight. Or, boy, what a hammerlock John Cena put on that guy tonight. No. Yes, you need to go through the basics. And yes, you have to have fundamentals under your belt. But the bottom line is you want to connect with your audience and communicate with your audience. Did the Warrior communicate? Hell, he stumbled and fumbled on promos. He grunted and groaned. But he had that connection, man. Even when people today ask, who did you watch and why? It's the Ultimate Warrior comes up. I understand because the colorful, the entrance, the energy and just that charisma was oozing out. And that's really what this is about. The Ultimate Warrior worked on the basics and fundamentals in California. He did go through wrestling school. He did put in that work. Did he need them during his career? No, not really. But he needed him to get that next step. He needed him to get his foot in the door. So, there's ways to do it, and everybody has their way of doing things. So they obviously didn't like my way at that time.
A couple more as we wrap up. Again, guys, X-Ray with Tom Prichard on ad-free shows. Make sure you guys check it out. Make sure you check out the Jacobs-Prichard Wrestling Academy, especially if you're in the Tennessee area, but really anywhere. The track record is unrivaled. So you wrestled earlier this year, which hit your sixth different decade wrestling. 70s, 80s, 90s, 20s, or 2000s, 10s, and 20s. Are we going to see you get to 7 decades? Are you going to work a match in 2030? Easy to tell right now, right?
Yeah. I don't even know if I'll make my 7th decade. I got more years behind me than I do in front of me, and I'm fine with that. I admire guys like Ricky Morton, especially who wrestles regularly on a consistent basis. I mean, he's out there a lot. And I've always thought Ricky was one of the greatest baby faces, top 5 of all time, at least up to this point in the business. And Ricky's 65 years old. Now, man, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, I admire his passion. I admire the fact that he wants to go out there. Honest to God, I'm happy training people. I'm happy coaching people. It was a lot of fun to go out there and have a match. But in reality, there does come a time when you don't want to embarrass yourself with the guy you're working with. So I think Ricky Morton can get by because he still has that fire. He still has that love. He still has that passion. So as long as you have it, you can still do it. But I think 6 decades might be good enough for me. And I might just, I might just dip my toe in the water like Fez did, though.
Yes.
I think Lou wrestled for what? So was his 7 decades?
I think it was 7 decades. And then
I might try to do that just to be.
There was some of the questionable stuff with Mae Young where she put her foot on somebody, but.
Well, that's what I mean. I may just go along that route. But either way, if I get to do it 7 decades, I don't think it means that much anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be something you could brag about. Now it's something I'm not sure you want to even talk about. But you never know.
And I'm working on a feature about like the production and putting together Royal Rumble matches. You were in the 95 Rumble, which was a lot different than a lot of other ones. I know you did some in Smoky Mountain, some battle royals that were Royal Rumble style, but that 95 one, the intervals were much shorter. It was like a 38-minute match. What do you remember about that match and it coming together?
I just remember it was not. We certainly were not an integral part or a heavy part of that match at all. But they're going to try something and see if it works. And I think that was part of just trying to keep the pay-per-view down to a reasonable time and,
sure.
and try and give it everybody a chance to get out there and have a lot of fun. So, especially in this day and age with the house show business being what it was even before all this shutdown happened, WWE knows how to innovate and knows how to regroup and knows how to reinvent. I think I wouldn't even go that far. They reinvented the business before when pay-per-view was in its infancy. So they've always tried new things. Hell, the cinematic look, things like that. So I think no matter what happens, there's always going to be something new and innovative coming from them. It's just the way they operate. It's the vibe. It's the magic pixie dust they throw in the hallways as you walk down the hallways that causes everybody to just come alive and start thinking of things. And Hunter's got a great mind, no doubt about it. He's got a lot of great people behind him, no doubt. So they're always going to have something on the front burner as well as the back burner, just to be ready. Was
Pat Patterson still putting those together at that time?
Yeah, sure was. We were all in the room when Pat and I think it was Pat, and I'm trying to remember who else was there at that time. Bruce, but as far as putting it together, mainly it was Pat.
Man, it's always interesting to see how one of those come together because it's so many moving parts, and you got to be out in this order and in that order, and it's meticulously planned. But then you only hear about of maybe 3 or 4 errors that happened over 30 some years, which is remarkable.
Yeah, and even when they happen, nobody else is aware of it except the people who made the errors, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of things and a lot of elements that took place then that just are obsolete now, and that's going to happen in every business, every sport. You have to progress and evolve and make it bigger and better. I always use the analogy: Major League Baseball bought the factory that makes the balls.
Yes.
So people want to go see home runs, hit home runs, and want to see an exciting game. So what better way to do it? They used to just move the fences in. Now they move the fences out and make the balls where they can just go farther and go faster. So wrestling's got to be the same way. The only thing that I think is missing in wrestling, and I've said before, authenticity, the storytelling, and for people to be able to get into it. It used to be, professional wrestling used to be kind of like MMA is today. Mm-hmm. And even some of my friends who a couple of years older than me have even said they're more into MMA today than they are professional wrestling. So if we can get back to that, and if you had more authentic guys like a Brock Lesnar who went in the ring, when they get in the ring, they bring that element of uncertainty and danger and something like, I'm not so sure if this guy's going to go off the rails or not. And that used to be all the time in wrestling, unpredictability, but not so much of that exists anymore.
Guys, check it out. X-Ray with Tom Prichard on ad-free shows. Check out Jacobs-Prichard Wrestling Academy, one of the best in the world. Tom Prichard, I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you, Sean. I appreciate it too, man. And you can check our website out at jpwrestlingacademy.com. That has all the answers to all your questions on there, jpwrestlingacademy.com. And check us out in Knoxville. It's a beautiful place to visit, beautiful place to live.
Guys, until next time, we're out.